This meeting is being recorded.
All right.
Here we go. Ashe.
Ashe.
Welcome everyone, and welcome all those that are here to participate in this wonderful meeting of the minds. We call this Re-Imaging the Dream. The AACM meets PAPA, the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, meets the Pan-African People's Arkestra. And I'm going to do some quick introductions. My name is Nicole Gantt. I'm the director of the jazz program at University of Pittsburgh. And I'm really excited to introduce you to all of these wonderful people here in this Zoom session. And I'm not going in any particular order. I'll start with Kamau Daáood, who is an amazing poet, and he's a co-founder.
Raise your hand, Kamau. Kamau, raise your hand, please.
Right here?
That's a good idea, yeah, in case people don't see the names.
Okay.
He's a wonderful poet, also MacArthur Genius Award winner, and one of the co-founders of the World Stage, which he co-founded with the drummer Billy Higgins, which is an amazing venue in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Then we also have Dwight Tribble. I'm sorry, and he's a member of the Pan-African People's Arkestra. Another member of Pan-African People's Arkestra is Dwight Tribble, who is the vocal director for the Pan-African People's Arkestra, who started on with Horace Tapscott in Los Angeles. I think maybe you've been involved for almost 40 years with this group. And we're really, really lucky to have members here that have been lifelong members, including Fundi Legohn, if you want to raise your hand as well, who has been a long time member, one of the original members, and has been an orchestra director. And the present director of PAPA is Mekala Session, who is also the godson of Horace Tapscott. Okay, so we have Douglas Ewart, who is one of the earlier members, longtime members of the AACM, and he's a former president of the AACM, or former chairperson of the AACM. We have Mwata Bowden, also a former chairperson of the AACM, and that's in Chicago. Renée Baker is a founder of the Chicago Modern Orchestra Project, member of the AACM. We have Maia, who's a multi-instrumentalist and who really helped to envision this whole conversation today, because she's a member of both the AACM and PAPA and has been in Los Angeles, I think, since 1996 or 1997. No, not that early. What year was it?
1999.
I'm sorry, 1999. Well, been a member for a while, and
Of the AACM. Yeah.
Oh no, I was saying
Papa.
how long you've been a member of Papa. That's what I was asking.
Oh, 2006.
Okay, 2006. Great. And then we have Coco Elysses, who is our president or chair of the AACM. And Dr. Erin Johnson, who is my colleague, faculty in the program of jazz at University of Pittsburgh. Did I leave anybody out? Did I get everybody? Great. Awesome. Well, it's wonderful to be in the room, in the Zoom room with y'all, beautiful people. And Dr. AJ and I are going to be, trying to facilitate conversation. There's so much that we can talk about, and it's really exciting. I will kick things off just by asking maybe someone from Papa to talk about origins. How did the Pan-African People's Orchestra get started? And maybe, I think this is also important that I just read this short description so that people that are here in the audience have an idea what we're talking about. They were talking about these two groups because of their importance in musical activism and their influence and contributions to the Black arts movement and also the Black Power movement. And so these two music collectives, the AACM and Papa, both came about as a part of, I think, an inspiration towards self-determination for Black musicians in both Los Angeles and Chicago. They came about in the 1960s, and they have endured into the 21st century, which is really wonderful and amazing. And so this is one of our first, if not our first, meeting as two groups to come together and share ideas and inspirations and collaborate with each other conceptually, hopefully musically soon as well. So I'll start there, and then I'll go back to my question about origins and see who wants to jump in.
As far as origins, basically back in the early 60s, a lot of the elders in the group were having difficulty with the music scene at the time. They were the outcasts. They were the cats that were playing out, and there were problems behind these cats being out. Horace, Lester Robinson, who was Eric Dolphy's best friend. Eric and Horace and all them cats used to study with this cat named Lloyd Reese. But what happened is they decided to start something of their own. Actually, Papa, Pan-African People's Orchestra, is just a part of a larger organization. The actual organization started off as being UGMA, which was Underground Musicians Associate, Underground Musicians Artists. And then it hiked into another level where it was Union of God's Musician and Artists Ascension. So that was actually, AACM and
the UGMA.
So now that's where that's at. So the cats came together, Linda Hill, Donald Dean, David Bryan,
and Pokey Hines.
Yeah, that's right. He helped me, Fundi. But Henry Franklin. Well, yeah, Henry was around. Yeah, but he wasn't like. Well, anyway, straight ahead. So after a while, it really became rooted, in the community there, and the organization became stronger. So I don't know where you want me to stop, because I could go on and on.
Beautiful. Maia?
I just want to say what he just described was exactly what Phil Coran described to me, which is why this whole conversation, collaboration was needed. During a time in the 60s with no internet, everybody always thought they were the only ones. But what you just described, Kamau, was exactly what Phil said. Black musicians and creators of composers were being shut out of the music industry, or all along 63rd Street in Chicago. They were shutting down the taverns, and Black folks just didn't have anywhere to really express themselves, which brought about the need for an organization, AACM. Wow.
I think in terms of origin, it's manifold driven in terms of what was happening sociologically, politically, economically. Chicago in particular, one of the most segregated cities in the world to this day, even though quantum change has come about, in my view of having been there since 1963. But it was all about control and shutting out, of course, is a part of controlling, not being able to express ourselves. And the music is a magnet. It brings people together. It brings like minds together. It brings about discourse, that organizing and all of that is precipitated by the music. A big aspect of it also was technological change, where people could replace a band with a disco.
Yeah, man. Mm-hmm.
and you know, the whole dancing thing that came about as a result of it. You could replace the band with playing tape music with an attractive woman in a window or something of the sort. But there was a lot happening also in Chicago. They even made laws to ban certain number of people from playing. You couldn't just have people sit in. So it was total control of, or they were trying to make total control of our culture. And I think also the music, the change in the music required people paying attention. And I think musicians were less inclined to see themselves as entertainers. And so it demanded a different kind of listening. And it wasn't selling drinks. People were listening to the music in a different way. This is, of course, my feeling about
Yeah, that's right.
But those things were really powerful in terms of changing music. And then self-determination, because you know, earlier we were joking about star, but the whole star system is one of restricting and they people choosing who is to be the star, and it can only be one or two. And so the rest of the people you're not even listening to other people. So I think the origin, the idea of self-determination, the idea of collectivity, the focus on originality was another driving component of the change. Not that there wasn't always creativity, but for example, with AACM, a big thrust, and with Papa as well, was that of original composition. And so that changed the trajectory and what was being listened to and what was being played. And since I know there are plenty of us, I'll be quiet.
I wanted to get
Fred Durf Redclaw. I just wanted to mention.
Yeah, he was also a member of both. Yeah,
I just wanted to mention him. We went to high school together.
Yeah, man, my brother.
And he was one of the great dancers of the twine. Yeah.
The Woodbine Twine.
The Woodbine Twine. Yeah.
He was originally on the list to be on this panel
Yes.
because of his connection to both. He and I were the two that were connected to both.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
salute, Durf. We
Yeah.
miss
I was around about 5 cats from Chicago at the funeral, and we got into it. I say, man, well, you know, he's been over here with us for almost 40 years now. So we claim him too.
We
you know.
claiming him, right. Yeah. You did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to see if anybody would comment, you know, before we left the origin question for some of these other ones. You know, there's this commonality of the decline of working conditions and opportunities from the 50s. In these organizations, there's a commonality in lack of welcome to new and original music in the spaces that, you know, purportedly would have hired you, et cetera. But I'm also wondering, I think there's another thing that was going on in terms of, of course, all of this is happening with the backdrop of civil rights movement, Black nationalism, Black arts movement.
Definitely.
And something I think people have never really mentioned is at the same moment in both cities and all across the country, the union is desegregating.
Yes.
And the union is desegregating in such a way that the Black unions are completely emaciated.
Being absorbed.
Right.
Yeah, absorbed, but become powerless.
Yes.
And creates kind of a leadership vacuum,
Yeah.
right? Because the story I read of every Black union is that, you know, we had the meeting room, we had the rehearsal space. It was the place you went for community contact. And then, of course, those were all.
Yeah.
So,
So
Yeah.
Doc, I want to comment on that.
Yes.
What I'm feeling, like you're feeling, during this period of time, it was in the air. It wasn't just LA and Chicago.
right.
It was in St. Louis. It was
Yep.
in Detroit.
Right.
It was time when Black people were determined to decided it was time for us to take responsibility for our own outcome before we were looking to be a part of. At this particular point, it was just in the air. It was important for us to take our own responsibility of what was going on. And I think it was in the air. We were all thinking that same kind of way. We have relationships with people coming out of St. Louis. They were thinking Bag came out of there. Had the same idea in mind. Cats in Detroit had the same idea and concept, that self-determination, ownership. And I think that's what we did in AACM. We decided to set up and be responsible for our own audience, for our own everything, for where we played. We made a vow to play our own music, original music. We weren't tied to anybody else's music, made ours the original music. So it was in the air at that time, and we all found that to be important to take on ownership. And as we did, and that's been where we've been, and I see Papa has been around this long time. It's definitely about ownership. You always rely on everybody else to do something for you, as we were decided to do it ourselves.
Yeah, we wanted to play this music. We wanted to get the energy out there. I mean, we didn't.
Yeah.
I think it's a Wi-Fi issue. Yeah.
Pardon me?
No, the Wi-Fi is freezing. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I'm just saying we weren't tied up into money. The thing what was most important was the community and getting these stories that was in this music and in this life force that was in this music to the people that gave us the music in the first place. You know, I mean, there's stories about when they had the rebellion in Watts in '65. The Ark was on the back of a pickup truck with the band on the back going through the streets of Watts during the riots, playing the music to the people. You know, That was the energy. That's what we were about. I mean, maybe later on to a fault, you know, in terms of learning how to handle the business. That came later and still coming, hopefully.
Right.
but it was that kind of vibe, you know, doing this work, you know.
Can I say something?
Yeah, Renée and Maia. Renée.
I think, you know, I was very late in even understanding, and don't laugh, what this Black music was. So coming to the AACM, I realized I needed to take that umbrella and make it my own. And I was coming from an absolutely 100% classical background, nothing but orchestra. But the spirit that the AACM and these groups brings to someone like me was a freedom to compose and to express in the same way that in the 60s and 70s that people wanted to play their own music and monetize it if you could. But for me, the continuance of these groups has been super important. I wasn't aware of Papa, but I was aware of Horace Tapscott. So tell me how I missed the hook. But I understood who he was. And I actually understood that he was earlier than the AACM in everything that I read. So for me, it is just so important that the music happened, that things were originated, and that it still continues and it grows, because my organization is completely devoted to this music, nothing else, completely devoted to great Black music. So I'm thrilled that every group that got started, and that it continues to still grab people's hearts.
Beautiful. Maia, you're gonna say something too?
Okay. The point of Sun Ra and how he emerged on the scene and gave permission to get outside of the box, sparked different people who had exposure to him and influenced other folks. I know Phil was directly influenced. Phil Coran, one of the founders of the AACM. I'm not sure how or what direct or indirect Horace Tapscott was, but Horace Tapscott's movement, I don't want to say it was singular, but kind of singular. He is known for generating this legacy. Whereas with the AACM, they started in the 60s, but not as a group. They were all coming out of the same energy that Horace Tapscott was coming out of, with the same mission of creating original music and also mentoring Black children, mentoring the community, giving music to the community, but also take it, it's a Pied Piper type of thing. Take the people with you, because the music is what inspires the spiritual surge and the self-esteem of Black people. And the music and the arts, but the music in front is what took everything up at that same point, 1960, 1961. Even though AACM's start is 1965, the thought was there.
Mm-hmm. You know, you were talking about Sun Ra, you know, and when Sun Ra used to come into LA, I don't care, there's stories about him coming up, knocking on Horace's door at 3:00 in the morning. And basically the whole concept of the Pan-African People's Arkestra,
right,
Yes, Sunrise.
From Sunrise.
Yeah.
And then, like when there was a gig we did at this high school where we opened up and we did the gig, and I'm around John Gilmore and all them cats, and and Catresses, and then Sunrise comes on and plays, and the janitor wanted to go home, and he cuts off the electricity, and Sunrise goes prance. Oh man, Sunrise went off. You said you don't know what you're messing with, But anyway, I mean,
serious.
Those relationships, but even relationships and consciousness between the two groups. When I was 25 years old, a horse sent me to Chicago. I was on my way to Detroit to the black literary thing there. I'm 25 years old. Caught the Greyhound bus, and so Horace sent me there. He gave me material from the Ark, and that's when I first saw Douglas and Threadgill and all them cats. Because I had to go to Transition East. I had to give the stuff to Muhal, and then Muhal gave.
Come
He'll
on,
be back. He'll be back. That's the connection.
That's a cliffhanger.
That's the connection.
All them, Douglas playing
say it again.
Back up 45 seconds.
So, Ma, you got to go back a bit because you broke up, man. So go back about Muhal. Once you had to give the music to Muhal, and he spread it.
Yeah. So all the cats and Catresses was rehearsing at Transition East, and I gave the stuff to Muhal, and Muhal gave me some stuff to take back out in the West. And then cats from Chicago would come to the area just like Maia did. Okay, Rasul Sadiq, Rasul, and then he's playing with the Ark. I mean, when Dirk come in town, he's playing with the Ark. I mean, so it was like a family out there, family over here.
An understanding. That's just that understanding. Like you say, man, it happened organically at the right time. Spirit, man. It was out of the civil rights movement, self-determination, as we mentioned, and the music was our music. We weren't being played on the radio. It was important to make our statement. All of this was blossoming and blooming as Kwanzaa was yet to come around. All of these things were happening, man. And with the music, this came before the rebellions, because we knew that was going to have to come. We got to stop this crap, man. And through the music, all over the country, as you said, it was just a spirit in the air, And in the community, Horace, like you said, Maia was an individual cat. He permeated the community with this. The music heals. When I met the Ark when I was 16, I saw it in the church, and people shouting like they're in church and throwing their hands up in the air. And I got a whole completely different picture of what this music really meant. And it's that healing, because as you said, out of that came the Watts Rebellion in LA in '68, but the Ark was right there playing the music, healing in the community, healing people.
We're already getting questions from the audience. Shanta Nurla, a member of the AACM, asked if there was any Coltrane influence, since I think people have talked about Sunrise influence.
Oh, Train, that was, of course. I mean,
modal concepts.
Yes.
They were all hearing or breaking the bondage of chordal
thinking,
and started dealing with this linear thinking of modes. And when you say what was Coltrane's influence, Coltrane was in the pool with the rest of them, pulling from the creative force that was helping and really linking them to their ancient selves. In Africa, we listened to the waterfall, we listened to the leaves, we listened to those things in our environment and created the sounds that coincided with that. And that's what came back with the pentatonic and so forth.
When we
you know that you talk about that code. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I've been running my mouth so much. Go ahead.
No. It's okay. It's fine. I mean, that's how discourse goes. But I was just thinking about the connection. The connection goes way further back than any of these organizations that we're talking about or individuals. What I recognized, for example, Rahsaan Roland Kirk was good friends with Muhal. And when you look at King Oliver's coming to Chicago, Louis Armstrong, not just King Oliver by himself, but with a band, and then Louis coming up to Chicago, many people coming through Chicago to New York, and then don't forget Kansas City. I think things are happening simultaneously in a lot of spaces. There's this notion, for example, that the music was invented in New Orleans, which I don't ascribe to that idea at all. And so I think what we're talking about is a communal continuum in terms of exchange and development. And when you look at different artists and the importance, for example, of Walter Diet, and I thought about John Gilmore's connection to John Coltrane in terms of even their ideas about, written compositions and improvisation, and then Yusef Lateef from Detroit communing with Eric Dolphy. I mean, so these tentacles, we're part of that continuum of that spark and those connections, and they run really deep.
That's a beautiful part of that, man, the tentacles, because we're touched by those tentacles. You mentioned Train. Train was influenced by Dexter Gordon. Dexter's from L.A., and all those connections, man, and we were sharing it. And the spirit is going to connect like-minded, spirited people.
Yes.
Yeah. You dig?
They talked about how much Train has affected this music and affected us. Man, I was 30 years old, and basically, I know so much about Train, and was so into his music that I don't have an AA, BA, PhD, or none of that. Where I was teaching on a university campus at 30 years old. After I got off my 8-hour job, I was run over to Cal State Northridge teaching 2 classes on African American music and one on nothing but Train. At that age, I mean, I had, at the time, they didn't have YouTube and they didn't have all this information, that they have now at our disposal, But I mean, I had so many, whatever book there was on Train or mentioned Train, I had, I don't know how many records, 200 records with Train on it. I mean, stuff like that. And it was teaching, having them turn out the lights and listen to Ascension, But, Train had a big effect on all of us, I think, I mean, that's real. And then Alice was in LA too, Yeah.
I wanted to ask, you talked about UGMA and Papa, and like UGMA being first, and could someone explain what the original goals or mission of UGMA was, and has it been absorbed into Papa, or to what extent, or how does that work?
Let's get Mekala in there.
Yeah. And then we could talk about that with the AACM. Maybe Coco could say something too.
There you go.
I was waiting for my moment. It's coming.
There's a lot. I really just have a great time listening to.
Yeah, me too.
There's a lot of knowledge just flying around here, hoping I can retain some of it. On the subject of UGMA, I first heard UGMA, or the Union of God's Artists Ascension, through the voice of UGMA, which was the choir for the Arkestra, which was started way back in the day by Linda Hill, who was like the first vocal director for the choir. And then learning after that UGMA was just like this way bigger organization that included the orchestra, the band, African drummers and dancers, artists, poets. It was, you know, they had a bunch of programs. They were really supposed to just be, you know, like a revolutionary, but like it was just like an artistic like answer to the community's like void of like art and just you know, Black unity and Black love and Black education. You know, I remember learning that like there was like a FBI or CIA file on Horace Tapscott because they thought he was dangerous. That, you know, he was hanging out with people that were in the Black Panthers, but he himself wasn't a Black Panther. That's not, you know, that kind of like, you know, I remember learning that a bunch of people in the ARC were very militant and very like Black power, but it wasn't, I don't know, violent. Like they used to play like schools and prisons and like play music and like bring something to the community that wasn't, you know, it was medicine. Yeah, I mean, I'm 26, so all of this is just like hearing from people who were actually there. But UGMA was supposed to be just like a community, yeah, like South Central, like program, like series of programs. They did like real work for like youth in the community. Yeah.
What was putting people to work?
Yeah.
You know, we had a print shop where cats in the band learned the skill of printing. Thanks to Horace, Marley Gibbs, people in the community that supported. But that was UGMA, an umbrella of these different pieces that all come together. And for instance, with the piece that you said you had queued up with our performance, that was UGMA on the set. And we don't get a chance to do that often, but we're incorporating that and revitalizing UGMA, the full concept of UGMA, because as was mentioned, PAPA, Pan-African People's Arkestra, just the band itself is just one element, the most visible, but just one element. And when the whole piece hits, it's magic, you know.
Yeah, you know, and the band, Mekala said something, you know, in terms of at rehearsal, there, you know, there might be like 14 pieces and everybody's rehearsing, right? And so you got old school, some of the old school cats that we love so much and gave us so much wisdom sitting over there nodding in the corner. And then in another corner, you got some of us with our legs crossed, vegetarians, meditating, talking about our own. You got cats standing with Russian Cossack hats and combat boots and green fatigues and shit with their horn and stuff with their horns in their hands. I mean, you know, it was a family. You know, Lester Robinson, who was, like I said, Eric's best friend, talking about close your eyes and read your writing on the wall, young blood. You know, from dandruff to the toe jam. You know, he's talking, and you're looking at Lester, huh? You know, I mean, it was just a big family. You know, all these out there in their cats. You know, and if Horace was Papa, Linda was Mama. She knew us, and she was the one. You know, where like behind me is my archives. You know, all these papers and posters and photographs and all that. Linda would take the language and twist that stuff around and to give it more insight and more depth to it, you know. But I'm sure. I mean, you know, when I was looking for Amos Moore when I came to Chicago, I wanted to find out who that brother was, you know, because I had heard about him and read his work. Because I knew you all had the same kind of people there and same kind of things there, you know. Right. It's a beautiful journey, I'll tell you. It's a beautiful journey.
Coco, you've got your hand up.
Not changing the subject, but I wanted to talk about a question that one of the persons in the audience said. Did the comedians of the time influence ideas about form and improvisation as well as political commentary? And I wanted to just, I can't really answer that from a comedian standpoint because I've only been on the stage doing comedy once. But the process of improvisation has definitely influenced the other areas of work that I do as an actress. I took the concept toward and put it in a one-woman show. And usually when I would do a one-woman show, whatever topic that it was on, it would be completely all written out. And I'm like, what if I had ideas that I would do and then go on the stage and allow that improvisational spirit to influence me as an actress? And it was very, very, very freeing. So I don't know if that gave you enough, but it definitely has influenced my other art forms. Does anybody have any other ideas on how the approach to music has shaped other art forms?
I was thinking, I want to hear what everybody says on that, but I know I do a little work I do on jazz and radio tells me that jazz and comedy used to be in a lot closer presentation in venues. They used, comedians acts in between jazz acts and jazz acts between comedy acts, and used to be mixed on the radio a lot more back in the day. And I wonder sometime if some very exciting artists got ideas that if a comedian can go up to a mic by himself, I wonder if I can go up there with a saxophone by myself and no band. So I'd love to hear what other people have to say about that interplay back then.
Maia?
Most of you know I coined myself multidimensional expressionist.
All right.
I do it all. What I have learned from doing it all, and who gave me, again, definition to that. Phil Coran gave me a lot of definition to what I've always been. It's just the truth. As a child, nobody knew what to do with me. Being a painter, an actor, a dancer, I act up. I all of that. What I have found is sound, rhythm, and form takes part in all the arts. Improvisation in music is categorized and defined as improvisation, but spiritual surge is what it is. You may start out taking a photograph and you see something and make a collage. That's improvisation. It's levels of making biscuits, and the next thing you know, you got some cinnamon rolls. When you get into the creative force and being someone who has been blessed with that in all kinds of directions, it is the same. Now, how music influenced that, music gave me a position on the world stage that I did not have. And because everybody relates to music, when you go anywhere in this world, if you can't speak the language, if you can play and touch their soul, it's all good. It's all gravy. So that's what I wanted to add to that idea.
Dwight? We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think that person that put the thing on our consciousness about comedy in this progressive music, progressive grassroots music that's always evolving. I think the person was just trying to give us another idea to incorporate into it. And I think that could be a cool thing, especially, when you think about some of the innovations and the stuff that Mekala is doing, and a lot of the new additions and innovations that Mekala is doing. So now I think, Mekala, that we might have to bring some comedy into the situation in some kind of way.
Hey, we already do that.
That's comedy at rehearsal. It's comedy at rehearsal. While the time we give them that stage, then they enough.
Yo, William Roper and Devin Daniels are some of the funniest people I've ever met. And if I get to give them a platform to do a bit of acting up publicly, I would love that. You know, something that you said, Maia, that was really interesting to me. I really think that comedians, musicians, dancers, actors, painters, most art forms, probably all art forms, are just different kinds of storytellers, because they're all like narratives that, you know, touch people. And the cool thing about music is that, well, I mean, so lyricless music, jazz music, a lot of which doesn't have like lyrics, whether it has vocalists or not, has a level of abstraction to it where you and I could hear the same piece of music and take away two completely different stories, or two takes on the exact same story. And so that abstraction is really, really interesting to me. And so with like, one of my favorite aspects of improvisation is that really, really good improvisation sounds composed. Really, really good compositions sound improvised. It's like someone just kind of made it up without really thinking about it. So dancing that line has always been fun. Man, some of my favorite arc jams are just good bass lines. I don't know what it is about the arc and just good bass lines that could be 2 bars long, man, and then everything else just kind of floats on top. You know, arrangement sounds so good, it's easy. Like, how did you even think of that? You really didn't. You felt it. So, yo, comedy is really, really hard. It's probably the most like naked you could be on stage. It's just a mic and go. You gotta tell stories or crack, and there's so many different ways to do it. And that's just like probably one of the oldest forms of narrative, straight up storytelling. And so that's like changed throughout the years. Is really, I don't know, it's hard to find good comedians now. I feel like the comedy wave is a lot more difficult to pull off. So I feel like if modern jazz music influenced comedy a little more, that like marriage kind of came back, AJ, like you were saying, it would make for some very interesting, you know, storytelling.
Yeah. You know, there was always a pulling from arts from all directions, visual artists, poets, musicians, dancers. I mean, it was, you know, I mean, everybody hung around everybody.
Hung out the same, yeah.
And like for instance, I mean, basically, they didn't call me a poet in the art. They call the poets the word musicians.
Word musicians.
And so basically, it was like, okay, I had to kind of listen to each of the compositions and kind of figure out a place for myself in those compositions, because Horace would position the poets where he would point to them just like he was pointing to a soloist.
Yeah.
So you never knew what was going to happen or when you were going to get called, and all of a sudden, bam, you know, you get hit. So you got to go, you got to jump, you got to jump stuff. And, you know, jump in whatever the musical environment is around that, you know, I mean, the subject matter of the piece, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, so all that's, you know, all those things are combined, you know, I mean, you know, the music, the word, the art, I mean, even how people present themselves on stage in terms of their dress. I mean, you know, I mean, we stole some stuff from y'all, not stole, but borrowed stuff. I mean, I got pictures of a concert where, you know, I've had paint in my face.
Yeah.
Wow. That's me too. Go ahead, Mwata. I know you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Going back to what Mekala said, what Maia said, and what Kamau has said, those of us who embrace this improvisational concept is really wonderful. It's all around us, and all of us who are into the various arts have taken that to heart. Yes, vocalists, the word artists, you use that same concept. When you were pointed to, and you had the saxophone player doing that, and you were a word artist, you came up with your story. I mean, it was just wonderful for me to witness musicians around here like brother named G-Ra and Douglas, the other poet, older brother that could tell stories. Put your mic on.
Richard Thomas. Shake a leg.
Shake a leg. Shake a leg.
Take a leg.
And the band could be cooking, doing everything, and point to shake a leg. And he'd come up with a story that was incredible that had to do with the music. Came right out of the music. Same way with Brother G-Ra. G-Ra was 6 feet tall plus. And the band would be cooking. Again, sometimes we would have G-Ra sitting in the middle of the audience and give him the cue after the band is cooking. You know, Terrell Harbor, a great trumpet solo, saxophone solo, and point to G-Ra, and he had this huge baritone voice at 6 feet tall. He would stand up in the middle of the audience. What was that? What was that? People looked around. What the hell is going on? And he had a story that was absolutely incredible and part of the music. So as improvising people, the way of thinking, it allows us to really express who you are at that moment and that time. It was always applicable. It wasn't up to the left. I mean, the band is playing here. You come up with something else. No, it allowed us to always be in the moment.
Wow. Mwata, that is so psychic, because what I was going to ask, and I said, go ahead, Mwata, I was going to ask if people could share big moments, like big moments of memory, and you just did it, and then you ended it with moments. I didn't even ask the question. You answered it.
I think we've been talking about things that are ideas and concepts that have to do with ownership for Black folks. It's not just around you, but it's throughout this country. And during the 60s, it was time. We recognized it was time not for us to be waiting for white folks to do something for us or give us permission for it. It was time for us to take on
taking this. Yeah.
And that's still relevant now.
We have Black communities.
Yeah, it really is.
Everything you wanted was in your Black community. And we didn't realize it for a long time. We were like to go downtown for something. And we didn't realize we had the whole world. I mean, anything you wanted to have done. Shoes made, clothes made, a suit, instrument. You could buy an instrument at the pawn shop, man, for $20 and go play your butt all night, you know, that kind of thing. So we realized it was all around us. We finally did realize that we had the whole world right there, but we did not take advantage of it until this kind of consciousness starting back in the 60s.
Gotcha.
That these kinds of things started to take shape and to rely upon each other as a collective, and how powerful that was, that collective. And as we talk about a pop-up, you've been around this long. AACM has been around this long, and that's because we relied on each other. We saw we could turn to each other, and the strength was there. We talk about the community. AACM has the concept of bringing on the youth, the next generation. That's where we are now. We're in another generation of young folks in AACM. That's when I found myself able to say, I'm an elder now.
Yeah.
Been around so long until I see, wait a minute. And Mekala, you said you what, 26, man? You baby. You know,
and he brought all of his graduates. He just graduated a couple of years from Cal Arts, and all of them came with him, and they came in there firing, ready to play new music. And we were like, okay.
It's magic in the music.
But
that's in all of the art forms that Black folks are involved into it. We recognize how important that concept of improvisation, taking ownership of the moment at that particular time. And for musicians, when I was coming up, it was about learning how to play licks and lines and hip cliches. I thought that was the stuff, you know, couldn't tell me nothing. I know 20 hip licks, you know, from the band, from Charlie Parker. Well, come to find out, in a creative point of view, don't nobody want to hear me trying to beat Charlie Parker. Ain't nobody go outdo Charlie Parker. Ain't nobody go outdo Coltrane. So leave them alone. They got their own legacy. Create your own.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
There's a great question from the audience, from Victor Schoberg. I'd love to learn more about the community band element of the orchestra through involving and empowering individuals without prior musical experience from a historical and current perspective. That's a good question.
Well, Horace, as was mentioned, was a community cat, man, and he went out. If you had an interest in playing, and I would say when you would see the Ark, let's say in the 70s, when I saw the Ark the first time, and just the spirit of the music drew you in, as you said, that magnetic force. Mm-hmm. And if you were someone who thought you wanted to be a musician or a singer or get up on the stage, this was it for you. Horace would open his arms and say, come on in. If you didn't know how to read music, you just start. And if you have that spirit and desire, come on in. And then you're around it. You're in it. You're in it. And you come and find you and put yourself in there, man. So through the community, and again, that medicine in the community, the band would play, and that's the medicine. That medicine it drew me in. Changed the way I heard music completely. Messed me all the way up. And it's for the better. Yeah.
I think from the AACM standpoint, starting the School of Music was essential in terms of, people were eager to play, and the musicians also wanted to make sure that the craft was continued. And so, because people were getting lessons individually from different people. Mual was known as a theoretician and someone that was a great imparter of knowledge. I have notebooks with a lot of his handwriting in it, and studying different things using graphs and the Schillinger and all the different exposure that he had. But I just wanted to quickly go back and firstly mention that we didn't come from a compartmentalized culture in terms of what was done. When you look at pieces from Africa, and even some of the pieces, Muhal even wrote plays, they entailed, comedy was an aspect of it. The seriousness was a part of it. The everyday part was a part of it. Politics was a part of it. Sexuality was a part of it. I think one of the things that happened with us as a culture is, the isolation of these parts of what was once a cultural entity for us, a cultural dynamic, where you had all of these things, as was mentioned. For example, stage shows. You could go to a stage show, see a comedy, see somebody playing solo, see a band, see all sorts jugglers. It's the same thing with radio. Radio was more eclectic, and as a result, people, I think, thought in a different way. I'm not saying that there aren't advantages to what's happening. And one last touch is comedy. When I think about some of the great comics, they influenced the musicians, and the musicians influenced them. They knew the musicians. They all knew. They traversed the same circuits for survival and for tribal. When you think about Godfrey Cambridge, this is somebody with a peculiar kind of wit. Then you had Dick Gregory. If you look at him, he was very political early in the game. Fred Red Fox and Moms Mabley, they were making jokes about things that were pretty serious. So they were interjecting a lot of things. Last thing to maybe say is that splintegration for us was a instead of integration, it became splintegration. Because when I lived on Champlain and 63rd Street between 63rd and 64th, doctor, postman, janitor, school teacher, lawyer, dentist, all lived on that block. People that worked as clerks. So you had a different dynamic. And that the corner stores were owned by Black people. The pharmacy, this is 63rd, was jumping. Around the corner was Howlin' Wolf, Tailgater. I can't think of his other name now. The tenor saxophonist played down
Willis
the street.
Jackson.
Yes, Willis Jackson. The McKees was up the street, Trianon Ballroom, and so on. I'm just saying, part of what we thought was an advancement was a big disadvantage.
Disadvantage.
Yes, thank you. This disadvantage for us, although people do need the freedom to move and go wherever they want to, but it's a polarity.
Yeah.
When we talked about community, one thing that I really appreciated about AACM, and I'm sure Papa did it too, is that the older folks should share and pass these ideas and concepts on.
Yes.
That's important. And AACM has been about that with our school, but also in-house AACM members. I remember Nicole was doing a class on composition, and I was out of undergrad school. So I'm coming into the class with my head big, thinking I knew something. Found out working with Muhal, I didn't know nothing.
Yeah.
Put something on me. Put something on me. Look, get yourself together, listen to what's going on around you. Here's some master musicians, some older cats, seniors around that was passing this information on. And that's what really turned me around. My whole learning concept being not just excited about the music, but deep into it, because that's where Muhal was coming from. It wasn't surface. He had information, as Douglas talked about studying routine, Schiller system, man, turned me around. So the concept of passing it on, sharing, bringing the next generation up, like I told you, it made me realize I was a senior when I was meeting the young folks coming up, and it made me realize that there are things that we have acquired now in life. So this thing goes on because we realize, let's turn around and give it to the young folks.
Yeah.
And they just had that. I worked in our school, all of us, it was part of our commitment, is that we pass this on. We have a school of music. But also I want to mention, not just a school of music, but Muhal had it for the mature cats, for the cats who was playing in the experimental band.
Thank you, Mwata. Thank you. Yeah.
But he was turning him on to his own special concepts and ideas that he had acquired over the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was wonderful. It's not sharing just with the kids and bringing them along, but also with your peers, because we've all at this particular point have actually discovered some serious stuff in our studies, our routine that we should take the opportunity to pass it on, because that's how I required the kind of information that I have now. Not because I inquired it on my own, but because it was shared with me from older cats and older musicians. And that's a concept I've enjoyed about AACM, and I've benefited from it myself.
Oh, yeah. Can I share something? I love the idea of education for young'uns, but I wasn't a young'un when I found out that you guys existed, that the AACM and these groups. And I'll give the nod. It was Nicole that exposed me to it. And I said, I don't really need this. I'm educated. I've heard enough.
Sounds just like you.
But I was surrounded by people from the AACM and people kept giving me CDs and things to listen to. And I said, oh my gosh, I don't like this. I don't want to hear this stuff. I'm not getting it. They
Told
pushed.
me that part.
Wait a minute. I was being polite.
Braxton
but you
has
know
a story
what?
like that too. When he heard Roscoe Mitchell, he was like, "Oh, I don't like this."
And people,
boom, his head exploded.
And people kept pushing him back. Says, "You're not listening. You need to turn off those classical ears, and you need to listen to these voices." And all I knew, the person that got me was Leroy Jenkins. Because at first, all I could hear was everything that my teachers told me never to do.
Yeah. Right.
That was the stuff. That was the real deal.
Right.
That's the real stuff. And
I
Douglas
kept
says you're
listening.
warbling now.
I kept listening and kept listening. And then I realized this was not a subculture. This was a culture that was alive and well that I just didn't know about. So for me, that was a big moment. And because of my exposure to our music, to great Black music, so many doors have opened, not only in my mind, but out in the world, in the business world. I mean, and because of my orientation, I've been able to take this AACM dictionary and apply it to everything that I've ever wanted to do in music.
Yes.
Everything. Everything.
What you say, Renee, is Nikki messed you up, huh?
She did.
No, Nikki turned her out.
She's more like they're out. Yeah,
What sharing is really all about is sharing, and knowledge and information comes back on us.
Well, you can blame Maia for bringing me into the AACM.
And
Coco.
when I met Nikki under the L train on Canal Street, she mentioned wanting to be.
On the street.
This is the way she said, you know anything about the double AAC? What did you say? The double AC? I say, yeah. And you know, I've been affiliated since 1976. We talk of Muhal. Muhal had one direction. Bill Coran had another direction. I started to say correction because he was always correcting people, but another direction. Jody Christian had another direction. Steve McCall had another direction. Fred Anderson wasn't a founder, but he had another direction. And then you look at Magoo Stute, Malachi Favors, who they had there's a word that keeps coming to me. I'll share with you. I've talked to Coco about that. Sanjitum. This is a word, as you can see, a lot of my musical influence came from one of the founders, Phil Coran, and that was something he told me about. Sanjitum is when it all comes together. All of the arts come together and it's presented. Now, in modern times, they call that performance arts and all other kinds of stuff they define. But the whole thrust about these two organizations is defining for ourselves. And our definitions come from our DNA and our connection way before this time. What UGMA did in one of the examples that Nicole has for us, I don't know if she'll get a chance to share, that's where it all came together. The word, the dance, the music on page, and the music off the page. That's one of the main things about composing is leaving that space for spirit to speak on page and off page. Real important. One more thing. I'm sorry. The education, the question that the young man asked about, young or old, asked about the education. Pandemic has put the call back in force. AACM regrouping and Pan-African People's Arkestra regrouping and mentorship is on the rise. Again, it's necessary. The same call that was moving around the country in the 60s is clearly moving around right now.
Yes.
And so yes, keep your eyes open here in LA, keep your eyes open in Chicago. With the internet, you can be anywhere.
Right.
Yeah. And mentor and be a mentee.
One more thing in terms of that, because that is one of the main principles in which the organization was founded upon. They always taught about teaching. If I give this to you, you got to give it to somebody else. That's all. I mean, Horace, when he was in Lionel Hampton's band playing trombone before piano, that and he was around all those older cats in terms of Central Avenue, and he had a teacher named Samuel Brown.
Yes, sir.
Whom we played, Teaching with the Love of Samuel, the ballad for Samuel, and they constantly gave and pass it on, and like Horace used to say, it's not about competition, it's about contribution. We're not competing, we're contributing to something greater. And so it was that kind of vibe. And just to show you, on Horace's deathbed, he passed the torch of the leadership of the band to Michael Sessions, who is Mekala's dad. And so it was a passing of the torch again. How he took for decades or so and ran with it. And then now he has his 25-year-old son carrying this tradition on into the future. So it was always about educating, teaching, like you say, in them band rehearsals, and you got these proficient cats that their chops is just super, and you got these cats that just stumbling with their instruments and stumbling and learning to read, but them cats right next to them, teaching them cats and raising them up, and then you look around and they fire too, So it's a beautiful thing, but that education, that was a major force within the organization.
Yeah, I'm pass the baton to Coco. Then I want to talk about future collaboration, because we want to make sure we make time for what moving forward. What can we do?
Yes.
Go ahead, Coco.
I wanted to bring up another movement within this musical movement that was happening with birth workers. And I would love for Maia to chime in with it. If you all are not aware, there is several birth workers within the AACM, ranging from midwives to doulas. And music was also a part of that whole process. And I wanted to know whether or not that was part of that movement that was happening in Los Angeles as well.
No one in the group, but like two of my children were born at home. A brother named Fawasi's daughter was born at home. So that it was connected. It was that was happening within the community.
And music being connected to it in this conversation was because we were musicians. I had my first child in 1974. I've been a musician since I was 13. Actually, since I was 3 when I had that little colorful xylophone, but we'll talk about that another time.
Johnson Earl added that was a part of the whole self-determination.
It's necessary to be able to take care of your own, which is, I have a long story, which I'll tell at another time, why I chose home birth. I did not go through the institutions to become a midwife. We didn't even call ourselves midwives. Doula was not a word that was even used back then. We called ourselves birth attendants. I personally have caught somewhere 40 babies who are grown folks now. I don't name the other women yet because I don't know if they want to be named, because it was underground. It was not legal in Chicago. It was legal down south. But I came from the South to Chicago, and because I was a musician, it became a part of what we did, the Medea Wakantwans. It was 4 of us that delivered quite a few babies in the community. And there were other organizations of women who handled birthing children because things were tight like they are right now. And we never knew when something was going to drop where we were going to have to take care of ourselves. We dealt with herbs, we dealt with, you name it, everything pertaining to the health of the family coming through the women. We trained them as far as cooking. We used meditation with guitars, all of the women. I won't use all of this time saying, but because of my connection with women that were doing that, when Samana, first all women's ensemble of the AACM, came together, we were already in line with childbirth. Shanta Nurullah, myself, and Aquila Sadala. Then Nikki and Coco were the youngins like Mekala, and then they started having children. They had their children at home from being influenced with us. That birth work is very important. It brings about a different creativity. The music reflects that. And I'm gonna throw it back to you, Coco.
Yeah, it definitely was an inspiration for me to become a birth worker. And I use birth worker too as a umbrella statement to for all women who work in that arena of childbirth, lactation consultant. I became a doula and was a doula to not only, am a doula to Nicole, it has a grandbaby coming on the way. I'm the doula for, and Maia was a doula for her daughter. Yeah, I just wanted to just share that light because I think it's part of the movement, and it's part of the sharing of, like Maia said very eloquently, how have self-determination is tied into that.
But you know, I didn't have a baby, but our only child was at home, and actually Bobby McCall was like the doula, Steve McCall's wife, and she was born at home, and I played the shakuhachi flute while she was coming. So there was that whole notion of not separating children from their mother that takes place in institutional birth, and just the whole vibration of taking a child into such a foreign environment and having them taken from the mother at such a crucial moment when they should be bonding, they're being separated. And then the emphasis on breastfeeding and making food at home instead of buying Berber stuff. So
okay, y'all.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah. So this time went so quickly.
We're there now.
So we just want to make time to talk about what possible, future collaborations, ideas, desires that we can follow up together. But there's so many possibilities. I think it would be amazing for these two groups to come together and to play together.
Sure.
Can we just get a gig this week?
Can you just ship us out there?
It would be amazing to have a residency. Maybe we'd have a certain number of days to come together, create, or look at it as a bigger picture type of thing. But what are some of your thoughts about that?
Nikki, I'd like to comment on that. In AACM, you
got a horn right now. Go ahead now.
Oh yeah, not a red horn. Things that we've done, Chicago being the home branch of AACM, we now have a New York chapter, which is composed of most of the original creators of AACM here in Chicago. Mm-hmm. We've done difference for our anniversary, like our 50th anniversary. We decided to bring back 50 musicians back to Chicago. to celebrate our 50th anniversary. And what we did was over that whole prior to that year, we did a lot of fundraising. We wrote for grants for outside entities to put into that project. And as I was preparing for this conference that we're in now, is that would be one way of us conceiving a way to bring us all together. All in LA, we have members in New York to bring, if not here, Nikki, in Chicago, maybe in Philadelphia or wherever we decide to do it, that each organization could work on a fundraising. We talked about the business, learning the business of being an independent music organization. We have learned how that business work. So now it's time for us as organizations to come together on that kind of thought. Business-wise, how do we come together? How do we fly 20, 30, 40 musicians in from LA, 20 from New York?
They do it for the
Philharmonics.
Philharmonic, Euro classical. It's time for the Afro classical to be respected on the same level. One of the things that I just wanted to add to the conversation, I've been asked for years, why don't you start a AACM West? And it just didn't, you know how things go in your body and that's not it. Pan-African People's Arkestra is already a living being. Yeah. So this would be the coming together of these minds to satisfy the universal call that will help us all rise to the next level.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that while we are waiting for the maximal situation, that we start off with even doing duets and trios.
Small groups.
Yes, initiating the concept. It's not how much you save, it's the fact that you save.
That you say it.
Yeah. And so if we can start off with a duo or a trio or a quartet, we'll get to the larger group, which we know will take some finessing, but we can easily start with a duo and not to undermine the notion of us coming together. We can also do it by Zoom. So I want to still come together because we know we're chemical, electrical, homosonic beings. So we need to be close to do some things and to feel some things. But my impetus now is everything is urgent. Now is the time to do it. Let's do it. I've done it with people in Haiti. I've done people with South Africa. So we closer here. So we can at least initiate using the technology, get the thing started, and then it will help propel us into the larger context.
Great, Dwight?
Yeah, my thought process is on the music, keeping the music alive and moving forward. You know, I think that the next innovators that we have are all around us, like they've always been around us, right on the street. You know, and we have to keep our minds and our hearts open to be able to recognize it. You know, I know that it's great to look backwards and to look at all that we have done, but you know, we have to keep looking forward and keep this music evolving and growing and you know, I mean, because we have these grassroots geniuses, you know, that's all around us, been all around us for a long time, and I think that sometimes we can miss out on them because, you know, some of them are homeless or, you know, walking around the streets looking like bums and all of that stuff, you know, but you know, these are some of our really urban, profound geniuses. And so, you know, that's what I think that we need to be really on the lookout and not being so stuck in what we know, you know, and what we've already done, you know, so we need to kind of pray that our minds and our spirits stay open so that when the genius shows up, when the genius shows up, that we will recognize it when it happens. So that will be the way that this music can continue to go, and we can continue to have new innovations in it, you know. And I don't think that part of the reason why you know, the broader community, and I mean Black community, is not necessarily appreciating what's coming from this movement is because it's probably one of the most elevated expressions that we have, you know, in our community, and a lot of people just ain't ready for it, you know, and that's all right too.
Yeah, it is.
You know, that's all right too. But the thing is that we're not reaching down and so that we can get to so that we can get to their level so they can appreciate us. We got to keep moving and hope that they will come. Just like Sister Renée, when, you know, she found it, and you know, and others will find it, but it's got to keep moving up.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Wow.
You know, that's true of the music from the get-go, because I remember when, you know, the band would be playing and you close your eyes, the place is full. You open your eyes.
Gone.
A few people left. So it took time for, you know, the people give us the energy and give us some of the messages that we carry back to them or forward to them. And sometimes, you know, it takes a while for them to even digest the very things that they see and feel, and we're reflecting. It's so it's complex. But I just want to say, being in the company of everyone here is a real
oh, I love it. What a treat.
Yeah, and you know, the love, the passion, the idea of passing it, because that's how we are who and what we have become, is because of a lot of passing.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you.
I would like to say this.
I'm wondering if I could just play like 1 minute of each thing, just so to have that energy in this recording. And then we can just close out, and if anybody has final things they want to say, you guys mind doing?
Let's say one thing, Nikki, before we do the music.
Okay.
Nikki, when I was researching to do this particular project, I was listening to Papa, and I was just amazed at how I felt like I was a part of it. I could easily have been right there.
Man. Yes.
That's
you all weren't speaking a foreign language, that we all was coming from the same space. And I started imagining us all being together in one collective, because we think the same way.
Yeah, man.
The same way. And I was like, damn, I've been with them before. I mean,
cousins.
About this for the last like 3
Be cousins.
Yes. Yes.
It's remarkable.
I'm gonna make it real short.
But
Okay.
that spiritual connection is so strong and powerful. And I didn't know any of you. And I'm looking at, they talked about Mekala and his dad. And I'm like, whoa, this is AACM. It's what is the same concept, 2 different parts of the country.
Yeah, man. Yes,
same ideas, concepts. We're living along the same path in a spiritual way.
Yes. Yes.
It's remarkable the way the connection. So, Nikki, if you're gonna play it, it doesn't matter to me if it's Papa or if it's AACM. It's there.
Just play the music.
Yeah, I think we need a little bit of sound. Just a little touch. Just a little touch.
Yeah.
AACM, now I'm gonna share just a little touch of Papa.
I was right there in there with y'all, brother. Man, that felt good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this is bad. This is bad.
And we are not for sale.
Woo!
We are not for sale, y'all. We are not for sale. Outside the box of freedom. Freedom.
Yeah.
All right.
What I love about that, Papa, is that you all hit the stage right with no music and smoke. I was like, oh man, it was great. I remember that. And Doctor, was that you doing poetry? Dr. AJ?
No, that was Kamau.
That was Kamau.
That was Kamau.
Oh, okay, all right. Woo! It was powerful, cats.
Yeah.
It was powerful.
Yeah, man. Man, just imagine the power of both of us on the
Just put
stage.
that energy into this, so that
Oh, man.
It'll be, woo.
Ooh.
that's the root right there. Is the music.
And what that would do, Nikki, is take a whole week of us in preparation before we had to hit. So we have to get them in, all get together like at least a week before I hit, because it's so much, and I know all of us on both sides have so much music we can bring to it. We have so many leaders and conductors for all of this stuff. We need to have that time to digest each other and come into that and come into everybody's music and find that space and time to spend together, because it's not just about playing music, but it's that connection, in-person connection.
We got to eat some collard greens and some cornbread and some tofu and some ribs and dips. I just want to say that this is a dream come true. I'm just so grateful. I am so grateful. I'll just sit in the back seat now, but I am just so delighted that this has gotten off the ground. And it is surging towards the respect of Afro-classical music.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. And I love you all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Maia, thank you for putting this together. I'll say too that I love, rehearsals. I love bringing my friends into what has always been my family, and, playing this music, playing compositions that are 40 years old, and playing compositions and arrangements that are 2 days old, old music and new music. But my favorite part about rehearsal is the hang, man. Like
right.
it is. Rehearsal and a 2-hour hang where cats are just talking to each other. I saw, the homie Brian Hargrove show, the homie Jermaine, like some crazy like inversion exercise, and he just like recorded it on his phone. Practice it probably later that night. Like, that is I love seeing it. So it was such a pleasure and an honor meeting all of you. And this is just day 0. It ain't even day 1 yet. Yeah.
First minute of a new day, Gil Scott Heron said.
He did, yes, he did.
First minute of a new day.
Yeah.
And can we share emails and communication? Because we need to just throw some ideas. I would love to do that tonight. I'm not waiting.
Yeah.
Do we have all the emails and the invite you sent out?
I know Nikki does.
I know. I think I have everyone's email, and I think Maia also has.
I have everybody's too, but like I said, I'm gonna take a back seat. Tell me what you need from me.
Send the email addresses.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to thank everybody.
If everybody would just open your emails that you've already gotten.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I want to say thank you to the University of Pittsburgh for hosting this event. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. Thank you to everyone. It was great meeting you. I am excited about what the future holds for us coming together. Let's do this.
Yes.
That's right.
The duet and the big thing. Let's do it all. Now is the time.
I say.
We doing it. We doing it.
Yes.
The fuse has been lit. The fuse has been lit.
Yes.
Size does matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Peace.
Oh, let's take a picture, y'all. Ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Hey. Hold on. The chat. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Got it. I'll send it to y'all.
All right.
Mine here too.
All right.
Blessings.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Bye, Coco.
Well, good.